LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock. The long-awaited details of Boris Johnson's roadmap out of lockdown are due to be announced later. The Prime Minister will tell MPs that all pupils in all age groups will be able to return to schools in England in a fortnight. Further changes are expected to be rolled out in 4 steps, with an assessment of the latest data at each stage. Vaccines Minister Nadeem Zahawi says it will be a cautious process.
It is making sure that, one, the vaccines continue to deploy and work, and then that we don't see, because of a particular reopening of part of the economy, the infection rates really shooting up to a level where it's unsustainable.
2 people from different households are expected to be allowed to meet outdoors from the 8th of March. Larger groups could be allowed to gather in parks and private gardens 3 weeks after that. The youngest pupils are returning to school in Scotland and Wales this morning. Scotland's route out of lockdown is expected to be outlined by the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, tomorrow. Wales' lockdown rules have been extended by 3 weeks. Our reporter Rebecca Miles is in Cardiff.
The Welsh Government has said there is now enough headroom for the youngest learners to go back safely. COVID cases are falling, and ministers here in Cardiff will be monitoring the situation to see if it's OK to phase back further age groups to face-to-face learning soon. The First Minister said on Friday they'll be aiming to get all primary school pupils back and some older students by mid-March.
Northern Ireland's lockdown is in place until the beginning of April, with pupils going back to school from the 8th of March. Labour is calling on the Chancellor to extend temporary business rates relief to save theatres, museums and cinemas. The party says there's a growing risk of losing both jobs and cultural institutions. Rishi Sunak is due to set out his spending plans in the budget a week on Wednesday. Boeing has recommended grounding many of its 777 aircraft after a jet suffered engine failure in the US. The plane had to make an emergency landing in Denver after its right engine blew apart after takeoff on Saturday. There were no reports of any injuries. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 73 at 65.50. The pound buys $1.40 and a euro 16. And the weather: cloud and rain across Wales, Western England and southeastern Scotland. Showers moving across the country through the day, reaching southeast England by the evening. Bright spells elsewhere, a high of 12 Celsius. From Global's newsroom, I'm Thomas Watts.
We all have our
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call Keir. Put your questions to the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
It is, and it's 3 minutes after 9, Monday, the 22nd of February. Delighted that Sir Keir is in the studio with me. Last time it was due to the, obviously, having to self-isolate, but he's here, suitably socially distanced. Sarah, you're the first caller, but before I have to get you, Sir Keir, welcome, and thank you for coming.
Good to see you.
I trust the family are well. All eyes, obviously, on the Prime Minister later today. Briefly, what are you hoping to hear? What do you fear you might not hear? What might you need you to groan inwardly?
Well, I want the Prime Minister to learn the lessons of the last 2 lockdowns. I think he came out too quickly, without caution, and that caused problems because we went back into lockdown. Everybody, and I think the Prime Minister's in this place now, wants this to be the last lockdown. So come out cautiously, carefully. That's the language he's using, so I'm looking for that this afternoon. That will inevitably mean restrictions for a bit longer, so businesses desperately need a bit more support. Business rate relief, VAT for hospitality, because they're going to struggle for another few months. So I want to see that. Then the final bit that's really important is, as we come out, the infection rate may go up because we'll be mixing more. And those who are asked to self-isolate need to self-isolate. Only 3 in 10 are doing it at the moment. So there's a big hole in the defences. And a lot of that is because people on low incomes are faced with a really difficult choice. They kind of want to do the right thing, but they can't afford it. So we've been saying today, make the £500 payment available to everybody who needs it, because at the moment only about 1 in 8 are getting it. If you don't make it viable for people to self-isolate, and 7 out of 10 aren't doing it, you'll have a problem coming out of this. So I'm going to listen carefully to the Prime Minister. I think he's using the language of caution and careful, and he's right about that. And if he is going to use that language, then obviously we'll listen very carefully to what he has to say.
And I'm sure you'll be giving media interviews as well as it fleshes out, as it were. Sir Keir, thank you. Your headphones are on, so we move to the first caller, Sarah in Stamford Hill. Sarah, go ahead. You're through to Sir Keir.
Good morning, Nick.
Hi, Sarah.
Hiya. Right, my daughter has missed out so much on her schooling through COVID-19, right? Mm-hmm. What is your message for any teachers and unions thinking of striking or reopening schools through pay? I think it's disgraceful.
And how old is your daughter, just so we get a bit of detail?
This is her first year in secondary, so she'll be 12 on Wednesday.
So she's 11, so she's year 7 child.
So she's just gone into secondary school, Sarah, this year. Look, I want all of our schools ideally opened on the 8th of March. That's what the Prime Minister has said, and we want to see that ideally happen, because I've been worried throughout the pandemic about the impact that being out of school has had on children, and it's been a real struggle, home learning, for many, many children. Some of them haven't got proper access to devices, etc. And there's a huge well-being issue. So get our children back into school on the 8th of March, ideally.
That's three times you've said ideally.
Well, I just
I've got to press you now.
Yeah, because... and I feel like a broken record on this, and I'm slightly frustrated. Back in September, I said to the government, have a plan. If you're going to get children back, you need ventilation, you need proper testing. And I've always said Nightingale classrooms. If you can put them up for hospitals, if you need more space in your schools, put your Nightingale classrooms up.
Well, they need extra teachers.
It's the space, actually, rather than the teachers that are needed, because a lot of schools, particularly in cities, just don't have the space to spread children out in the way you might need to.
For testing purposes.
Testing and for teaching purposes. The other thing, Sarah, that I pressed the government on, which they didn't take up, was we just had half term, and I said to the government, use that to vaccinate teachers and school staff before we go back to school. And they didn't do it, and it is frustrating. I'll tell you for why. In my constituency, which is Holborn and St Pancras, Camden, the Crick Institute has done vaccinations. They're fantastic. And by the way, the vaccination system is absolutely brilliant, and all credit to those on the front line. But the Crick Institute...
to the Prime Minister for the vaccination programme?
The Crick Institute...
would there be credit for the Prime Minister on the vaccination programme, or Health Secretary?
I'm prepared to give credit to everybody involved in the vaccination programme. It has been rolled out at speed, mainly by the NHS on the front line. But coming back, Sarah, to this point, the Crick Institute, 2 weeks ago when I went to see them, which was a Friday, was saying they're not opening on the Saturday, Sunday, because they hadn't got enough people in category 4. So they had vaccines, they had people ready to vaccinate. They said that they could actually have worked those 2 days, and my frustration is they could probably have vaccinated the teachers and school staff of Camden in that weekend, and nobody would have been bumped down the queue. Now, I do understand the government, you can't just have a free-for-all, but I honestly think that if we'd used that last half term, that last week, to vaccinate teachers and school staff, we'd be having a better discussion about children back to school. But ideally on the 8th, I'll listen to what the Prime Minister says this afternoon. I hope he's got a good plan.
And what about Sarah's point about there are mutterings there could be some industrial action? Would you support that, Sir Keir?
I don't think there should be industrial action, but I do. I mean, the teaching unions are right to stick up for their members who have been through a really hard time in the last 12 months. The stop-start schooling, they've been obviously in school for key workers, and there's been a lot of stress and strain on teachers and school staff, and they feel they haven't been listened to by the government. I think Gavin Williams should to get on the phone to the unions and tell them what his plan is, so everybody can get round the plan to get our children back to school as soon as possible.
But you don't support industrial action, just to clarify.
No, I don't. I don't want
catch-up classes during the summer holidays. That's been floated as well. You probably saw that.
Yeah, that may be possible. Again, we've got to, school staff. I was about to say school staff have been working around the clock. Remember, this time last year they were preparing to work through the Easter break, and they'll probably be ending up doing that again. So they do need a break. There needs to be a long-term plan to catch up, because the attainment gap has got bigger over this pandemic. It was bad enough before it. We need a long-term plan for catch-up. But We do need to give credit to teachers and school staff who have been through a huge amount of stress over the last 12 months.
But we do need to think of summer classes of some sort.
We need to think of how we do catch up and close the attainment gap. We absolutely do. And I don't want to go back to where we started, by the way, because the attainment gap was bad enough when we started.
Sarah, good luck with your daughter. Happy birthday. Happy 12th birthday to her. We have to move on. Mina, I hope I've got that correct, in Enfield. Good morning. Is it Mina?
Yes, hi, good morning, Nick. Good morning, Sir Keir.
Hello.
Hi, Mina. Nice to hear from you.
Your question.
Likewise. My question is to do with my small business. I'm selling clothes online using different platforms. Since 1st of January, I've not been able to sell to the EU, as the majority of my customers do not want to pay unexpected and imposed levies, such as import duties and taxes. So since Brexit, I've lost all my clients. So the government promised a free trade agreement, but the deal that we've ended up with is as bad as no deal. It's destroying trading in general with the EU, and we haven't got a deal with any other country that we can sell freely. So my question is, I'd like to ask, were you aware of these additional trading costs imposed at the time that you supported the government to go ahead and sign the deal? And is there anything that the Labour Party can do to rectify this disaster?
Yep, Mina, I'm really sorry to hear about the impact on your business, and it's one of the things I feared under this trade agreement, which is much narrower than it should have been, and I hope that can be sorted out for you. We supported the Brexit deal that the Prime Minister brought back because the option was that deal or no deal, which I mean would be a lot worse. But that doesn't make this a good deal by any stretch of the imagination. And your example is exactly what a lot of businesses have been going through. Mina, one of the things that we often do as a result of being on this show is to take up particular issues. And let me take up your issue with the government on your behalf. We have raised this in Parliament a number of times because, there's too much red tape. The Prime Minister actually said when he got the deal there wouldn't be any what he called non-tariff barriers. Well, he's wrong about that because, and you know that very well from the impact on your business. But Mina, we'll take that up and we'll raise it with the government on your behalf.
Mina, stay on the line, and this has worked very successfully in the past. One of my colleagues passes it on to one of Sir Keir's, and in some instances actually questions get asked in the House. So Mina, stay on the line just briefly. On this subject, it was reported on the weekend of Brexit, one of your MPs telling a newspaper, it's like, don't mention the war when it comes to Brexit. That's the message from leadership. Is that the case, Sir Keir? And if so, why?
No, it isn't.
Unfortunately, we don't have the identity of that MP, but you have many.
That usually tells you something about the story. When people won't go on the record to actually back up what they say, no, that's not true in the slightest. Rachel Reeves in the Shadow Cabinet leads for me on this. She has raised no end of issues. In fact, many times she's been saying, goes back to Mina's point in a way, we haven't got enough customs officials on the front line, and this is a real cause for concern.
The problem in Northern Ireland, I was going to get you on that. I mean, can you see a solution there? Because obviously we're focused a lot on COVID, but as and when the country emerges from that, there's a potentially very dangerous problem in Northern Ireland, Sir Keir.
Yeah, we've got to improve the situation in Northern Ireland. The EU didn't do itself any favours when it threatened to take action on the vaccine, and I think that's why they backed down so quickly. But the Prime Minister has always pretended that the situation in Northern Ireland would be absolutely fine. Do you remember when he said, if anybody asks you for paperwork, put it in the bin? All great stuff, quite a joke at the time. But actually, of course, now we're seeing the consequences of that. And they are serious consequences, and we will raise them and hold the government to account.
So does the protocol need to be reworked?
Well, we need to make the protocol work better.
So it can work, it's just the application.
Yeah, unpicking the protocol is problematic in terms of the way that it works, but it has to work better.
Arabella is in Ilminster. You're on the radio. Good morning, Arabella.
Hi. Hi, Keir. Good morning.
Hi, Arabella.
I was a member, and I then left because I got very fed up with all of the infighting. I then rejoined because I was hoping that, that when we had a change of leadership, things were going to improve. And I just wondered, how you felt things were going in terms of drawing the party back together, and whether you felt, all the infighting and things were really improving.
Arabella, I think we are improving as a party. And certainly on the big issues, I think there's a pulling together now. I did a speech last week on what I see as probably the biggest political decision we're going to have to make for the next 10 years or so, if not more, which is after the pandemic, do we go back to where we started and patch up, or do we go on to a better and different future? And I say the Labour Party argues for the second of those, which is to go on to a better and different future. I think the vast majority of our members and supporters are behind that. Obviously, there will be difference of views along the way, but I think on the really big issues, the party is, pretty united on it.
I get a word from you, Arabella. Would you agree with that, just briefly?
Well, I yes and no. I mean, I listened to the speech and I just felt that it didn't necessarily speak very much to people of my demographic, which is sort of not younger than baby boomers, but older than young people, if you see what I mean.
Arabella, one of the things that or two things I said in the speech, really. One was we need to support 100,000 startups with loans for the jobs of the future in tech and science, etc. And the other was bonds for those that have saved during the pandemic because they haven't been spending money. So I think there's something in there, Arabella, but it's a big political decision as to, if we go back to what we had before, we go back to an economy which, in my view, was unequal and unjust. And I think patching that up isn't the way forward. After this amount of sacrifice, this amount of solidarity in the pandemic, we've got to go on to something better than that.
All right, just talking about the future, it's reported. Thank you, Arabella. It's reported that you now, or members of your team, have online calls with Lord Mandelson. What have you learnt from him? What advice has he given you?
Well, I haven't spoken to Peter myself for a little while, but he's been talking to the team, and I've talked to lots and lots of people about where we go next. And my mind frame is I will talk to anybody who I think is worth talking to about where we go as a party and a movement, as a country. And therefore, I've had many, many conversations with lots of individuals.
Including Tony Blair?
I've spoken to Tony Blair, I've spoken to Gordon Brown.
What advice does Mr. Blair give you?
Well, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of it, but actually the last couple of calls I've had with Tony have been mainly about the work he's done on the vaccine, because, as you know, he's got a team there working on the vaccine, and they've done some really good reports about where we should go next. So,
right. But where should you go next? Because, as we said before, you're the leader of the opposition with a government that's been there for 10 years in various guises, some would say horrific austerity measures, not a great start to the pandemic, and yet you're still behind in the polls. If I now drop Tony Blair's, he was 10 points up at the same stage. You're 4 or more points behind. Why do you suppose that is?
Well, I think there are a variety of factors. We lost in December 29 really badly.
Well, Tony Blair would argue he inherited a pretty divided party.
Inherited a Labour Party that just lost an election. That's the worst election loss since 1935. I don't want to compare that with Tony Blair, but that's a very bad starting place. And this time last year, actually, we're in the leadership race for the leadership of running around the country. Yeah. And the question people were putting to me then was, is the Labour Party even going to survive? You've been through this terrible election result. Is it going to survive? Now the challenge to me is, are you going to form the next government?
Not the way you're standing at the moment.
So that has changed. The other thing that's been difficult is being an opposition in a pandemic is difficult, because there are times where rightly we should support the government, and we've done that on the major lockdowns. We'll have a look at what the package is this afternoon in terms of coming out of the lockdown. I think it's right to support the government where they're getting it right, but to challenge where they're getting it wrong. So that's made it difficult. And the other thing is, I haven't been able to get out and about. I haven't given a live speech. I haven't given a speech to a human being as leader, apart from the camera person sort of behind this, just making sure I'm in focus. But every speech, every press conference is down the barrel of a camera. And I want to get out there and make the argument, the sooner the better. But, the thrust of the challenge, do we need to do more? Yes. I never thought picking the Labour Party up would be a 1-year exercise. Right. I always knew it was a 4-year exercise, and it's going to take us every day, week, month and year into 2024.
And lastly on this, earlier this month it was reported that a branding organisation called Republic had suggested you and your colleagues should use the union flag more and dress smartly. Is that part of the rebranding that will put Labour back on track, Sir Keir?
Well, that was some of the findings they had from a focus group that they ran. It wasn't actually our strategy document, as people have said.
Yeah, branding.
But I don't have any problem at all with the Union Jack. It is I want
flag.
to be the Union flag. I want to be the Prime Minister of the United
But I never
Kingdom.
see
There is
one
the
behind
flag.
you when I hear you talk, nor Annalise Dodds, nor none. And when I have government ministers on, they're always surrounded with, well, that's ridiculous. Priti Patel likes at least two. Others always have a flag fluttering, but no Labour front bencher.
No, that's wrong, actually. When I do my addresses to the nation and my press conferences, we do have a flag. And because it's the flag of the United Kingdom. Also, I'm patriotic. I want to lead our country because I want our country to be even better than it is now. I fundamentally believe in our country, and I'm very comfortable with that. I don't have any problem with that. I actually think that if you think about the Labour Party, it's 500,000 people who've joined the Labour Party who are active trying to get Labour elected because they believe in a better future. That is very patriotic, and we shouldn't be shy about this.
Amanda's in Letchworth. You're on the radio. Amanda, your question to Sir Keir. Good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Hi, Amanda.
My question is, hello. I was self-employed. I lost my job a year ago in March, so it's literally coming up to a year. Being self-employed, I was one of the ones that fell through the loop. I've had no government help. I've had no money for a year. I've got a mortgage. I've got a son who's gone to uni, and it has been really hard. So I've now had to take up a van driving job, 0-hour contract for minimum wage. Now, at 40 years old, it's an insult now to go back to minimum wage. That's not enough to pay my mortgage. And it seems to me that all the help has been handed out. I'm not going to sound like I'm being rude, but this is how it comes across to me. People that are on benefits, that get their rent and their council tax paid, nothing has changed for them. You put their money up. Self-employed people that have their own businesses and work hard, you've taken our jobs away from us from no fault of our own because of the pandemic, and some of us have fallen through the loop completely, and we've had zero help. If it wasn't for my family helping me, I don't know how I would survive for a year. I've written to my local MP last year in the state. I was crying down the phone when I phoned them saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. You've taken my job away from me. I have no money and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I've got a mortgage to pay. Right. I've got a son that's gone to uni at that time as well. And there is no help.
No, just to point out, of course, Sir Keir is leader of the opposition, so I think, and I do have to say, I sense you're one of the so-called 3.5 million who've been left behind, which again, I have to say, Sir Keir has referenced in Parliament. Keir Starmer.
Yeah, Amanda, look, I can feel your frustration, and it must have been really awful because actually, in fairness, the government has put a lot of support behind people in business, etc., but it has missed out key people like you. There's about 3 million or so who, for one reason or other, have never had any support at all for, what is it now, the best part of a year, and that's particularly self-employed people.
And we're approaching another budget.
We're approaching another budget.
The ninth chance he'll have had.
And Amanda, it's completely unforgivable. I completely feel your pain, and I can hear it in your voice. You shouldn't have been left with no support. We will raise it again, Amanda, with the government. We've done it over and over again. I actually know quite a lot of Conservative MPs feel quite strongly about this because when I stand opposite the Prime Minister at Prime Minister's Question and challenge him on this, I can see some of them sort of nodding along with me because they know that it isn't fair on you and the other 3 million or so people who are in the same position. And, at the beginning of the pandemic, it might have been understandable if some had been left out on the schemes that were drawn up in a hurry. But a year down the line, this is unforgivable, Amanda. We will raise it again, and I'm really sorry you've been put in that position.
Credit to you. It's a fantastic job you're doing. I tell you what, your boy will see his mum doing that and will learn so much for his own life, Amanda, and credit to your family as well. You look after yourself. I hope we talk again soon on a happier note. Thank you. Dave in Portsmouth, you're through to Sir Keir. Go ahead, Dave. Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Hello, Sir Keir.
Hi, Dave.
Why did you make your major speech last week 3 years before the next general election, where most people will actually forget what you said a week later?
Dave, the reason for that is because I think and I hope that the vaccine is going to offer us a way out of the pandemic. It's the light at the end of the tunnel, and therefore, for the first time since I've been leader of the Labour Party, we get to the question of what comes next, because obviously during the pandemic, most of the questions have been how do we get through? What's the support that needs to go in for businesses? Now, for the first time, we get to the question, what do we do next? And so this is now vital that we make the right decision. Do we go back to business as usual where we started, to which I say no, or do we go forward to a better, more secure, more equal economy, to which I say yes. Dave, it's very important for me to make that argument because I think that is the critical argument for the next 10 years or generation. Now, Dave, I'm going to keep on saying it between now and 2024, so don't worry about that. I'm going to build on it. I'm going to repeat it. We're going to make that argument, Dave. It's not a one-off argument, of course. It's a big, big question. But, Dave, I think, I was going to make that speech a couple of months ago. Because I thought it was so important. But then when we went into a third lockdown and my wife works in the NHS and I knew just how stressed it was, I thought this isn't the time for that speech. So I waited and gave it last week. But I think now is the time, I hope, because of the vaccine, to say what comes next.
OK. Some response was a little underwhelming. In a sentence, were you disappointed by that or did you expect it to your speech last week?
Oh, there was a good response to it, I thought. I mean, you will always get some people saying I don't think much of it, but lots of people...
Overall, you were happy with the way it landed?
Yeah, lots of people talking about it, and I was watching some of the Sunday programmes and the chat shows on the Sunday morning, and they were talking about the speech, and that is a good thing.
OK. Dave, thank you. John in Bridport, you're on the radio, John. Morning.
Good morning, sir.
Hello.
This is for Keir Starmer.
Yes.
Hi, John.
Question, if I may. Oh, good morning, sir.
Hi.
Well, sir.
Oh, don't worry about that. You call me. Well, I say call me anything you like, but
don't push your luck here.
Within reason, Keir's fine.
I've just offered me cap to you.
Yeah.
Listen, have you ever made a comment about the Mayor of London renaming the streets? Have you ever commented on it?
OK, this is right. This is Sadiq Khan, London Labour Mayor. There is a possibility. No, in fact, the commission has been started that is going to be looking at historic street names, historic monuments, and statues. Sir Keir.
I haven't spoken to Sadiq about it, John, but I think each community, whether it's London or anywhere else, is entitled to have a conversation about what it wants in terms of statues, in street names, etc. And it needs to be decided, I don't know, city by city, region by region. So, but I haven't actually spoken to Sadiq about it.
You would support, then, in some instances, statues being taken down or street names being changed?
I think communities are entitled to express a view on what statues they want up in their area. So I'm not sure I see it as a priority in terms of what we're living through and what we've got in terms of getting the country back up and running.
Right.
But if I was living in a community, I probably would like to express a view one way or the other, and I think that's not a bad thing. But
right. The suggestions are that the panel that Sadiq Khan has put together is rather narrow, perhaps. It needs broader representation.
I haven't looked at the panel, to be perfectly honest. I will now go and do so, right. But I'll have a look at it.
OK, we'll talk perhaps next time you return. John, thank you. Is it Johan in Nine Elms? Hello,
yes,
sir.
It's Johan.
Johan, OK.
Hi,
Johan in Nine Elms. Go ahead.
Hi. I wanted to ask Keir Starmer about his position on university tuition fees and whether he supports a refund for university students.
This touches you personally, does it, just out of interest, Johan?
Yes, I'm a third-year university student in London.
And you've had a shocking year, I imagine.
Yeah, at the moment I'm paying over £9,000 a year for 3 hours of Zoom calls a week.
And what are you studying, my friend?
I'm studying politics.
Interesting.
Johan, look, firstly, my heart goes out to you because this has been really tough.
It's Johan, just so
Johan, I'm so sorry.
No, it's my job.
Johan, my heart goes out to you. It's been a really, really tough year, and there's a real frustration. I think some universities are working on a rebate of some of the money that's been paid. I think certainly for accommodation, some of it is being repaid. I think last time I looked. But not everywhere, and I can see there's a case to look at this again because it is a lot of money. The only thing I'd say is we've got to be careful where the payment comes from if there is a repayment, because universities themselves have been under a lot of strain in this 12-month period. But the frustration from students, I mean, I've done a number of calls now with students who, broadly speaking, have been stuck in a flat, 6 people, all learning online and not really having the university experience that they were expecting by a country mile. And I think we've got to look at how we can rectify that. But I don't think just putting the burden straight back onto universities is necessarily the way forward. Some of the good universities are taking some steps, and we need to encourage others to do so.
And good luck with your studies. I don't say that blithely either. I know it's very, very tough for you. Anna in Camden, I sense you're the last question for this edition. Anna, go ahead. Good morning.
Anna, you're in Camden, then, so you're a constituent of mine.
Hello,
Which road do you live on?
I'm not going to put that on the road.
No,
sorry,
right.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, next I'll ask you which way you vote, then you'll be in real trouble. Right, Anna, your question, if you would.
Yeah, I wanted to know why didn't Sir Keir actually agree that the health minister should resign, considering the recent judgment, and what is his opinions on cronyism, and also what does he think about people saying, this is not me saying this, but people saying that he tap dances for the Tories?
OK, there's 2 points there. This is a High Court ruling on Friday. The Department of Health acted unlawfully by failing to publish billions of pounds of COVID contracts. Some of your colleagues, and these are named for a change, Claudia Webb, Richard Bergen, think Matt Hancock should resign. David Lammy seemed to join in with that. Your view on that, and then I have to ask you, are you a tap dancer? But come to that first, if you would, Sir Keir.
Anna, look,
should Matt Hancock resign?
Anna, we've challenged the government uphill and down dale on cronyism. Rachel Reeves gave a very big speech on this 2 or 3 weeks ago. We've raised it in Parliament over and over again. Where are the contracts going? How much money is being sprayed at them? And critically, when they don't deliver, why don't you ask for some of the money back? So we've attacked them hard on that. The particular case in relation to Matt Hancock involved whether the declarations had been made in time. And I don't think that is an issue. I mean, he should apologise and come and explain to the House. Of course he should. But at the moment, in the middle of the vaccine, my strong feeling is that the vast majority of the public would say, for heaven's sake, what you should be doing, Keir, is making sure he's working really hard to get that vaccine rolled out properly, rather than calling for him to resign.
I sense it's good you don't know the road she lives in, because I don't know if you've currently got Anna's vote. You're a tap dancer for the Tories. Sir Keir?
Not at all, not in the slightest. And I get attacked on both sides, which makes me think I've probably got it about right. We support the government where we think they're doing the right thing. So we support them on the lockdowns, we support them on the vaccine, of course, and challenge them where we don't think they're getting it right. Testing, we challenge them uphill and down dale. Protective equipment to the front line. And when, last year, challenged them to go into lockdown in the autumn when the Prime Minister said he wouldn't, and challenged the Prime Minister that he was making a mess of Christmas mixing, and he said he wasn't, but then he changed his mind. So it's that balance, and I say, I get attacked for supporting the government, I get attacked for attacking the government, which makes me think, it's a difficult judgment call, obviously, but probably we're getting it about right.
Too quickly from me, as a former DPP, you won't need reminding of this, but the Prevent strategy, William Shawcross is to lead a review. There are concerns by some people, not least because of Mr Shawcross' comments, I have to say 9 years ago, concerning Islam. Sir Keir, is he the right man to head the Prevent review?
I don't know about that. I do think there are issues on Prevent that we need to look at. We do need a programme, but there are issues on Prevent, and it's overdue for a review, in my view.
But should William Shawcross be the man?
Well, I don't know whether he should be the man. The comments were a while ago, but the Prevent programme does need a review.
Lastly, this is a question actually from Rachel in Bexley. Is an Uber driver, quotes, a regular worker? This will be Friday's.
I welcome the judgment from the court on Friday. It's been a long battle for Uber drivers who've now won that, and I think the court judgment is a big step in the right direction.
Isn't there a danger some people now they could shrink this economy, the gig economy, Deliveroos and Ubers of this world? They'll take jobs away. You don't fear there?
I think that one of the biggest problems for our economy is that there's too much baked-in inequality and too much insecurity, and I think that's morally wrong, by the way, but I also think it doesn't work. If you look at the economy from 2010 to 2020, it has not succeeded. So you can't even make the argument that this economy with fragile working and inequality, although morally wrong, works, because it doesn't. So actually, this is a big step in the right direction. Secure, well-paid jobs with businesses working together with government are the way forward.
Sir Keir Starmer appearing here, regular course for Call Keir. Look forward to seeing you again next month. Best wishes to your family. Thanks for being. Sir Keir Starmer on LBC when news is next.
Sir Keir Starmer has told LBC the government missed an opportunity to vaccinate teachers before the reopening of England's schools. The Labour leader says ministers need to come up with a long-term plan to ensure children are able to catch up. Boris Johnson is set to announce that all pupils will return to school in England in a fortnight. It's the first part of a 4-stage plan of easing coronavirus restrictions with a period of some weeks between each phase. The Prime Minister is also expected to set out new data that suggests vaccines are reducing transmission of COVID-19. Mr Johnson's roadmap will be set against 4 key tests that must be met before moving on to the next step. Cloud and rain across